Right from season 1 of Bridgerton, it's obvious that women in that era didn't have as much freedom as men, as they constantly had to endure many rules based on etiquette. But then, the rules are so crazy, and learning about them will shock you and make you pity the Regency era women. During the Regency era, there were so many rules a young lady must follow to live comfortably in society, and disobeying them could make a lady an outsider. And in Bridgerton, fans saw how these rules were being carried out and how some characters like Eloise tried to question them occasionally. However, these rules are even weirder than you might assume, as the first etiquette rule we will discuss in the Bridgerton era is that a lady must have a perfect and elegant posture. A woman in the Bridgerton era, both young and old, must be able to walk and stand straight without bending or drooping to the side lazily. Viewers remember this was an important etiquette for women when the debutantes presented themselves to the queen, as the ladies who stood tall like Daphne got the best praise. Also, during the balls or a walk around the city, viewers would notice women were always walking elegantly as they moved swiftly in their pretty dresses. However, this important habit of good posture doesn't just fall on the ladies in Bridgerton, it's something they learn from a tender age. And any lady with a bad posture when young must face harsh corrections to get things right. An etiquette expert, Lucy Challenger, revealed how these corrections are made in Bridgerton, saying, "Perfect posture was a must during the era, so much so that many young ladies were fitted with a backboard, single pieces of wood fixed in place by a leather strap that would ensure they sat up straight. Also, their tight corset dresses barely allow a bad posture, as they could get hurt if bending or drooping." Another etiquette young ladies followed in the Regency era was to come out before the queen so they could officially join the society in search of a husband. As soon as a lady reaches the marriageable age, which mostly applies to teenagers from 17, they must be presented to the queen, as viewers saw in seasons 1 and 2. And in this case, her family must be present to guide her into becoming accustomed to society. When a young, unmarried lady is new in high society like Edwina and Kate, she must be properly introduced and recognized by the queen before finding matching prospects. However, another crazy rule that applies to the young ladies of Bridgerton, especially the high class who were born privileged, titled, or wealthy, is that they must not relate to or court a man of low status. Interestingly, women of the high class don't even get into a situation where they can make friends with a poor man, as that would ruin their reputation. In the Bridgerton era, wealthy people married themselves for more money or titles, and the fairy tale type of love story barely existed. But then, in Bridgerton, Eloise made a friend in the lower class of society, Theo Sharp. Eloise and Theo's interactions were mentally stimulating, and viewers were happy someone like Eloise finally found her match. Like Eloise and Theo both know, their friendship may have been the best thing, but it would never have been allowed to succeed because of their different economic status. Although many fans are shipping Eloise with Theo and hoping the character returns to marry her, it's against the rules for that to happen. Many fans have wondered why there are many whisperings and side eyes in Bridgerton. And the answer is that women weren't allowed to laugh out loud or shout. And that was why everyone in the Bridgerton house was shocked when Eloise shouted at Daphne to make haste. They aren't even allowed to raise their voices or remark loudly. Instead, a proper lady of the Regency era must learn to speak with her eyes and bottle any angry emotions in public. The proper way for a lady to address someone she's annoyed with is to ignore the person with a sharp side-eye look that cuts them out. And all of this is obvious in how most of the wealthy class women behave around someone they don't like, as they give them that disgusting stare and ignore them. If done correctly, this act can crumble anyone's self-esteem in a public place, as it's even more powerful than shouting, which was seen as classless behavior at the time. Learning to behave, especially when invited to a ball or dinner, is another important task the Bridgerton ladies must live by. Social events undergarments are a must for young unmarried ladies out in society searching for a husband. And if invited to a dinner party, they must show up and show out because any mistake could be an embarrassment. So, when attending events like that, a young lady mustn't dress casually, as that's an insult to herself and the host, which could lead to a bad reputation, and things like that must be avoided. Also, sitting arrangements during dinner is something a young girl must learn to do, as they must sit where assigned or where they think properly suits their status. However, while eating, a young lady can only speak when spoken to and must not look directly into a man's eyes who's not a relative on the table. Another strict rule that the Bridgerton era women followed is that they mustn't wear knickers as an undergarment under their dresses. It doesn't matter if people wouldn't know since it's hidden anyway. It was a big etiquette rule, as only men could wear knickers in those days. But the crazy thing is that women had a lot of challenges when it came to dressing because they truly suffered from this rule. So whenever women were seeing their periods, they had no underwear or shorts to contain this, as they would freely bleed on their dresses and leave the stains for the maids to wash. This happened with Daphne in the show, which supports the fact that women barely had anything to cover up under their outfits. Even when they finally allowed ladies to start wearing anything similar to knickers, which were called drawers, they had an open crotch area. And this invention was still helpless when a woman saw her menses, although they found ways to manage their monthly periods by cleaning up after free bleeding on their clothes. It's obvious it wasn't the best way to go about it. Also, ladies have many fancy things that go with their dresses that can easily show people that they are wealthy. The number one on the list is umbrellas, and there are many beautiful umbrellas in Bridgerton, but only the upper class can access them. The poor people didn't have umbrellas, so it's a sign that a lady is from a good family if she goes out with a pretty and decorated one. Fashion and dressing up might have been a big deal in the Regency era, but such would no longer be applicable when mourning. Women especially were subjected to this rule, as a lady was meant to dress in all black for 12 months if her husband passed away. And she's also expected to wear black for 6 months if her parents or in-laws become deceased. This particular rule could be seen when Lady Danbury's husband passed away in Queen Charlotte. However, she couldn't wait to get out of the mourning clothes because Lord Danbury's demise was more like celebrating her freedom. But then the reality of the Regency era was very strict with outfits, as no fancy item must be found on a mourning lady. So that automatically means such a lady wouldn't be able to go to important ball parties during the period. The most important rule in the Bridgerton era for a young lady is that she must remain a virgin before marriage. And because this was very important, any situation that could lead to being with a man must be avoided. Activities like going to a bar for drinks, gambling, and moving with women who have scandals hanging all over them must be far from ladies from a good background seeking to marry well in society. Young ladies weren't allowed to go to certain areas or streets that could corrupt them. Even their mothers barely talked to them about their bodies and private areas, which is why they are usually clueless about how babies are made. So the only thing they are aware of is that babies can only come through marriage, so they remain in the dark till they are eventually married. Also, because they must remain virgins till wedding night, a woman can't be seen alone with a man unless with a chaperone, who's usually an older woman. This is a big deal in the Regency era, as it could cause panic for a young girl in such a compromising situation. In the show, Daphne was at a big risk of this, as she was almost attacked by a dangerous suitor who wanted to stain her reputation. Thankfully, Daphne knew the best way to defend herself. Although the Duke showed up to rescue her, he also put her at risk after Anthony caught them alone and was very angry that his sister's reputation had been ruined. So, in that era, women who had lost their innocence were seen as damaged goods that no one would like to marry. The funny thing is that Anthony ignored most of these rules with Kate. Also, Penn has been constantly disobeying the rules by being with Colin without a chaperone. Also, ladies must not be heard or seen calling their suitor by their first name without adding their title. They must also be on gloves so they don't mistakenly touch a man with their bare hands, which was strictly forbidden. A young lady of the Bridgerton era era is never allowed to travel in the same carriage with a man who's not a family member and without a chaperone. Even with a chaperone, a lady mustn't sit beside a man inside a carriage, as that could lead to them making body contact. Bodily contact, such as arm or knee touching, can be quite scandalous, so it's better if a woman travels separately in her own carriage. There's a Bridgerton scene where Benedict and Madame Delacroix were sitting so close together in a carriage, and it was wrong for Madame Delacroix to have allowed this. And what's crazy about this is that the woman is the one who gets blamed, because that could mean that she has been soiled. However, that was allowed in the show because Madame Delacroix is seen to be above the marriageable age, as a single young girl would have had to pay for that and carry the cross for a long time. Also, that means the carriage scene between Penn and Colin in season 3 is improper and could damage Penn, no matter how much fans enjoy looking forward to it. If you've always wondered why Penelope feels embarrassed whenever her dance card is empty at a ball, it's because it's against the etiquette rule to be at a ball without dancing. A young lady must show her social strength and give the impression that she's open to interactions and ready to be in a courtship. Being antisocial was unacceptable in that era because sitting back while others danced would be a huge red flag, especially for potential suitors. A woman not getting her dancing card signed, or who has no one to dance with, will only put off her admirers because no one wants to be with anyone who gets constantly ignored on the dancing floor. Usually, men prefer signing the cards of the most sought-after young lady over an outcast because the competition to get the best woman was always high. Interestingly, excessive dance with one man is another thing a lady mustn't partake in during the Bridgerton era. There is a proper amount of times a lady can dance with a gentleman. Also, if a lady is free and her dance card isn't full, she's allowed to dance with any man who asks her, as that's part of following the etiquette at a ball. Another thing a young lady in the Regency era mustn't do is approach a man she doesn't know to introduce herself. That would be outrageous and daring, which are attributes that a young lady shouldn't have in that era. Instead, she's supposed to calmly wait until someone introduces them. Once the introduction is done, the lady is expected to curtsy while the man is meant to bow as they address each other formally. And that's when she could finally talk about herself and her interests and even go on the dance floor with such a man. A lady must always curtsy, especially when addressing a royal person, meeting someone significant for the first time, entering and exiting a place, and at the start or end of a dance. So, a lady must be attentive to her environment and ready to do all of these, as it shows how well brought she is. Curtsies are formalities, and the Regency era survived on that culture. A lady who ignores or overlooks them would be disregarded as uncivilized. Another important rule a lady must follow is never to propose to a man or make the first move. It's simply outrageous and could cause a scandal in the Regency era. So a young lady must wait for the suitors to make their desire to court her known, and she can now accept from the best suitor and start courting. However, during courtship, all of the rules a lady must follow while with a man still apply to her and the fiancé, which means they can only meet with a chaperone. Also, there was nothing like a private proposal, as a proposal must happen right in front of a third party to be considered valid. Everyone gossiped in the Regency era, but no matter how widespread it was, a young lady mustn't be caught spreading rumors. Rumors are very powerful and could alter a person's social life, so it was simply an etiquette rule that a proper lady avoid gossip and not be one herself. In modern times, people started identifying as introverts who would rather stay inside to avoid human interactions. But in the Bridgerton era, it doesn't matter if a lady is shy. Once she's a debutante and on the marriage mart, she must become sociable to find a match. Every important event in town, from small gatherings, picnics, dinners, and balls, must be graced by a young lady looking forward to marrying. Then, taking evening strolls with family or a governess was also important. The mothers of such young ladies are always making sure that their young lady gets invited to where the important people are gathering, because there are always prospective suitors at this location looking looking to find their brides. That's why in Bridgerton, viewers see that every young lady of the ton is always at the ball, and that's because it's the only way to get around, as sitting out isn't allowed. Following these etiquette rules can be challenging for young ladies introduced to society, so the wealthy family tries to make it an easy transition. Young ladies get instructors who teach them how to curtsy, eat at a table, and even dance while preparing for their first official ball or outing. So all of these rules are very important, and young ladies in the Regency era must pay good attention to them because a wrong move could end in a scandalous situation that could taint the image of the family forever.